the government shopped, as our friends at Blacklock's writes, gas cap slogans. They were workshopping, how do we get people to agree to something that is going to make life more expensive for everybody? And so this is what Blacklock's writes. In pre-election focus groups, they shopped various slogans to persuade Canadians to support a cap on oil and gas emissions, according to in-house research by the Privy Council. They said participants were presented with a series of statements outlining various reasons behind the federal government's decision to cap and reduce emissions produced by the oil and gas sector. Focus group slogans included, no sector of the economy should be allowed unlimited pollution. That one was rated popular. Almost all reacted positively to this statement. Another slogan stated, the world is increasingly moving away from fossil fuels. That was unpopular. Very few participants agreed with this statement. Good. Yes, thank you. A third slogan was, the federal government is asking oil and gas companies that made record profits in recent years to reinvest some of that money in technology that will reduce pollution. That's a mouthful. That
sounds expensive. Yeah.
Many reacted positively to this, I would suggest, very communist statement, by the way.
Yeah.
These were liberal campaign slogans. Why is the Privy Council doing this research?
Shouldn't that be apart from election campaigning when you're the government? Shouldn't that be apart from this? Are there rules prohibiting this kind of behavior, Sheila?
Yes, but this is how they get around it, because this is how they also had Mark Carney advising the Prime Minister, but only doing it by advising the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, and who also happened to be the Prime Minister. That's how he got around all those conflict rules, which has turned Canada into Brookfield Country LLC. They were workshopping their campaign slogans on the gas cap through the Privy Council. So Canadians were paying for partisan Liberal research that they would then use during the campaign to make sure that Ontario elected Mark Carney. So I guess thanks. I wonder how much that cost.
Yeah.
Still from our friends at Blacklock's, the press feared an opposition win. Yeah, I bet they did. And you could tell it in their coverage of the campaign. The Manitoba Daily, that led the national campaign for a $595 million media bailout, that's the publisher of the Winnipeg Free Press, said uncertainty of the political landscape is impacting subsidized newspapers. They didn't identify any political party by name, but noted the loss of taxpayers' aid would hurt the business. And that's from Free, I think it's FP, Canadian Newspapers Limited, wrote to their shareholders. The company received $2.8 million in taxpayers' payroll rebates last year, compared to $1.8 million the previous year. And you can tell, that's why Ezra calls them the media party, because they're an actual political party, or at least a third-party advertising group, unregistered, that were actively lobbying against the Conservatives in all of their coverage, because the Conservatives promised to defund the media. This is what funding the media does.
You could literally see it in the lead up to the election by their coverage, at which degree they've been funded by the federal government. Because the more funding they received, the more vicious and aggressive in their attacks on the Conservatives they were. And this is the predictable result of funding the government by the federal government. When your livelihood is on the line, Of course, you're going to hype the guy that's going to keep the gravy train rolling. Of course, you are. When in reality, if there were any journalistic integrity, these companies would be refusing any federal funding, doing reporting like Rebel News likes to do, that's interesting and engaging, and that our people love, and be able to hold truth to power. But as it stands right now, this is not the journalistic landscape we have in Canada. We have a really, really corrupt system working against us, especially as conservatives.
Yeah, and if you were in the media, even if you weren't biased, and I think there are some out there that are sort of straight journalists still out there.
Well,
Brian
so
Pass,
few and far between.
so
So
few and
few,
far.
yeah. Yet they
Brian
do
Passafume,
exist.
Brian Passafume with National Post, I think, is one. But even if you were like in the subsidized media, you should be concerned about the perception of bias.
Sure.
That's a thing that that's why nobody trusts the media. You give them more money, the trust goes down. You give them even more money, the trust goes down, because even if they aren't biased, nobody trusts you.
That's right. And it's not like they disclose that they're receiving funding. As a matter of fact, they will jump all over the place to try and say that they are, that they're thoroughly independent, that they earn their money the good old fashioned way, when in fact every single one of their published pieces should come with a caveat right at the top saying,
Sponsored.
this publication has received funding from the federal government. That should be part of it, but it's not.
Yeah.
Makes it really hard, especially for older Canadians, to be able to see through some of this.
That's right. And that's really who is still reading newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think everybody consumes their news online. And that, of course, is why the Liberals picked a fight with Meta. And that is how older people get their news. That's how they, like journalists are on X. Mm-hmm. Younger people are on TikTok and other platforms. And older people were on Facebook. And that's how they shared their news, reacted to the news, discussed the news in the comments section. And the Liberals, by trying to shake down Meta, they made sure that couldn't happen. So there's a whole generation of people who used to see a diverse viewpoint and different arguments happening in real time in the comment section. They don't see that anymore. No. They just get it from the subsidized media now by physically going there.
Yeah. And their access to actual media is limited by mandatory carriage on Canadian television. Right. Canadian radio and television. So they have been indoctrinated by our left-leaning government to only exist within the approved narrative of the corrupt mainstream media. Like it is, I think that that's going to be a real issue moving forward in the conversations that we're having in Alberta and Saskatchewan, which is why it's so important that the events and the sort of public education pieces that Rebel News and other independent media is doing is so important right now. We have to break through their firewall. That's what they built, is a firewall between the people and the truth. And we are the ones that have to bust through it. But it's again, it's always our privilege to do that for you guys. So
let's face it, Canada's economy isn't heading in the right direction. Inflation's eating away your savings, and government debt is out of control. No politician is going to fix that overnight. With Guildhall Wealth, you can hold real physical gold and silver inside your RRSP. It's a time-tested way to protect your retirement and take back control of your wealth. Call 1-877-8-SILVER or visit guildhallwealth.com/rebel to request your free investor kit, and hey, make sure to mention Rebel News.